Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 lives up to all the critique that is being levied at it right now. It is a glorified $70 DLC purchase, with a lackluster campaign both in terms of gameplay options as well as story. Let's talk about it. I am a Call of Duty vet. I have played this series since even before Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. I took large breaks from it, but with Modern Warfare 2019, I decided to keep playing the Modern Warfare games, at least the campaigns, and I dabbled my toe into Warzone. Now, I'm actually a fan of Call of Duty campaigns on the whole. They are a bit of dumb fun with some interesting stories and amazing characterization. And I've been a fan of what the Modern Warfare remakes have been doing. I loved Modern Warfare 2019 and what it brought to the table. Modern Warfare 2's storyline was lackluster, but the gameplay variety and missions on offer were all dynamic, different, and fun. However, when it comes to Modern Warfare 3, they do a few things that to me are very interesting and direction shifts that I really hope the series explores and doubles down on in the future, while also just being mod down in so much repetitiveness, unimaginative storytelling, and reused content that it drags the entire experience down significantly. Now, what are the main critiques of Modern Warfare 3's campaign? Let's break this down piece by piece, and let's start off with the gameplay. Call of Duty gameplay is never really that complicated. When we really think about it, what do most of the campaigns kind of devolve to? You shoot jabronis, and you may have to hold E or something, or hold a button at some point. Generally speaking, that's what most of the time you are doing. But it's the way they're able to shake that up, and the way they're able to change how you're shooting or change how you're interfacing with the world of Call of Duty that can draw you into a Call of Duty campaign and make it fun and interesting from a gameplay perspective, because Call of Duty has fun gameplay as a whole. As like a rule of thumb, the gameplay flow of Call of Duty is really fun, it's fast-paced, and it's replayable. What are the issues with Modern Warfare 3? Well, they kind of doubled down on one of the direction shifts Modern Warfare 2 took that I was not a fan of, and that is giving the enemy armor. In my opinion, one of the mainstays of Call of Duty is its time to kill, both for you, the player, but also for the NPCs and everyone else. The fact that you can get overwhelmed and die quickly is an interesting challenge and an interesting trade-off when you can just tap everyone once in the head and they all fall, as if you have Conqueror's Haki from One Piece. But the problem is when you introduce armor into the game, you extend those time to kills, both for you, the player, which I don't mind necessarily, especially on higher difficulties, but also for the enemy itself. And issues when it comes to weapon balancing become far more glaring and obvious when enemies have armor associated with them that showcase those differences and deltas in damage outputs for each weapon. You can make an argument, and I think you can make a legitimate argument, that, because of armored enemies, you want to make sure you have a weapon that is good against armored enemies. Duh. That makes sense. However, just scavenging and using whatever you like and whatever you can get your hands on is, for me, one of the cool aspects of a Call of Duty campaign that, to me, is kind of lacking in certain respects with Modern Warfare 3 because I have to focus on the armored enemies, which isn't that big of a deal if you're playing on lower difficulties, but if you played most of the campaign on Veteran like I did, outside of the last, 3 missions or so, then it becomes a bit of a drag whenever you have to fight an armored enemy. It just slows the pacing of the game down tremendously, and enemies can become bullet spongy. Now let's talk about the glaring elephant in the room, Warzone. Warzone is the Battle Royale game mode Call of Duty brought into the field with Call of Duty 2019, Modern Warfare. It is a Battle Royale that takes place on a large map. Back then it was on the map called Verdansk. You'll see a lot of those locations and points of interest showcase themselves and are just straight up the maps that are utilized in many parts of the campaign for Modern Warfare 3. Now, why is this an issue? Well, it's reused assets and reused content. A lot of people, especially if you really played Warzone a lot, you already know these locations. They're not offering anything new to you from a gameplay perspective, or at least from a map perspective, when it comes to just going back to a small segment of Warzone. I feel this issue will be extenuated, especially if you played a lot of Warzone. I played a little bit of it. I didn't play too much, but I wouldn't say I played a small, negligible amount either. I recognized Prison, I recognized the Dam. There were places that I absolutely recognized, and I could tell some places were absolutely from Warzone, even if I didn't explore them all that much myself. By itself, this wouldn't be necessarily that big of an issue, but when you're charging $70 or even like $90 or $100, depending on what edition you go for. How much is the Vault Edition? Let me check real quick. Yeah, $70 for just the privilege of playing the game, and $100 for the Vault Edition. That is a lofty price to pay just for reused maps. If you're gonna fork over $70 or $100, depending upon what edition you go for, you want new content, you want innovation, you want a reason that you spent that money to be rewarded, because you want the gameplay to feel like it is at least the cost of admission. Modern Warfare 3 fails to live up to that idea. However, I do feel like we're missing the forest for the trees in some regards. One of the main critiques that have been levied at Call of Duty campaigns for ages now has been their exceeding linear design. Most Call of Duty campaigns can be really interesting from a story department, but when it comes to the gameplay, a lot of them boil down to just corridor shooting, linear gameplay sections that don't really have that much player agency compared to a lot of other FPS single-player campaign modes. Take Doom, Wolfenstein, or Halo for example. But I and many others loved Call of Duty despite that, because the gameplay of Call of Duty was so crisp and fun and rewarding and replayable that I didn't mind just essentially having an exhibition to utilize that gameplay in some regard, just with cool set pieces surrounding it. Call of Duty is at its best when it's simple and grandiose and is just absolutely stupid, or is grounded in reality and real events. We're gonna go back to these ideas later on when we get to the story. But when it comes to the gameplay, where does it flounder on? Well, I like the idea of having these more open missions. Now, you see, the idea is they will drop you in a more open section, give you a few objectives to go and pursue, and you can do them in a non-linear order. If you remember Going Dark from 2019, think of that non-linear idea. We can go for any objective at any time in whatever order you want, but apply that to like half the campaign here. Now, does it get a little bit stale? I would agree. I think the actual objectives of what you are doing in these missions is rather lackluster and dull and repetitive. They kind of amount to you going to a point, shooting some dudes, either activating something, defusing a bomb, or blowing something up, go to another point, rinse, repeat. So while the mechanics of what you're technically doing are not all that inspired, I do like the idea of Call of Duty leading into those non-linear aspects and giving you more open-ended missions. I think that is an idea that can be doubled down on in the future and expanded, as well as some of these Warzone mechanics. Yes, obviously, a lot of these mechanics, like the armor system, like weapon caches surrounding the place, like loadouts, very Warzone and inspired. However, I think they may have a place. I like the idea of being able to explore the map and my efforts for exploring that map to be rewarded by finding really cool weaponry. I like that idea. Call of Duty used to do that with Intel. I don't mind it having some kind of gameplay advantage with various weapons. These advantages carry over to you even if you die, because they go part of your loadout for that mission. So when you die, if you played on Veteran for most of the campaign like I did, well then all the weapons you have collected in your runs up to that point become available to you from the very start of the mission. It's an interesting idea, and I think I would like to see them take another crack at this. And there's another aspect that I think is pretty decent when it comes to these missions. You can tackle most of these extremely stealthy if you want to. My main issue is, if you mess up once, you're pretty much screwed. And then the mission just kind of boils down to you taking cover and then taking pot shots until you whittle down all the enemy guns they keep throwing at you. I think certain missions have better spawn points than others. There's this one map where truckloads of enemies just spawned, and you can be walking forward and a truck just spawns in front of you. You have to be at the outside perimeter of the map, but it doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel justified in its implementation. It feels like repetitive difficulty being thrown at you with sheer numbers instead of creating interesting compositions for you to go against. It feels lazily implemented once you figure this out. And you can argue, and I would concur, that it doesn't just feel lazy, it is lazy. I honestly think one of the most egregious parts of the campaign, even coming from a gameplay perspective, is the checkpoint system. If you didn't play this campaign on Veteran difficulty, you may not know exactly what I'm talking about, but if you are like me and you like torturing yourself for some reason, if you die on Veteran on most of these open-ended missions, you only gain a checkpoint once you complete an objective. For these open-ended missions, to complete an objective requires you to go around the entirety of the map, getting all the points. So if you die once, sure, your loadouts may carry over, but the objectives don't. They can be kind of inconsistent in that regard, but still, general rule of thumb, you have to beat all the objectives available to you first, and then you get the privilege of having a freaking checkpoint given to you. So if you're right at the end and you die, congratulations, you're starting the whole freaking mission over. But while that is widely annoying, and I think the implementation in Modern Warfare 3 is absolutely subpar, there is a glimmer of hope here. You see, for some of these maps, you would gain equipment like an Ascender, which would latch you onto a wire and you can zip up it, or zip down a line, like a zip line, to a different location. If you get that in one life and then you die, that piece of equipment carries over. So on a mission like High Rise, which in my opinion is the best mission in the entire game, this map has you ascending a high-rise building, where you go from the bottom to the rooftop, battling enemy after enemy, and even going through different buildings to come back to certain locations. If you die, you go all the way back to the bottom at the beginning of the mission. However, if you acquired an Ascender, well, all of a sudden, you gain a massive skip to, like, the 9th floor. Right from the beginning. I love that checkpoint system, or at least the idea of it. I think the map design of High Rise is really cool because there's so many different avenues of attack and different routes you can go to achieve your objective. There's a lot of secrets you can uncover, which is really appealing to me. And I think if the campaign was overall better, it's design ideas like this that would add replayability to it. I think in terms of the gameplay, though, one of the biggest critiques that can be levied at this game outside of the checkpoint system is the lack of variety. There is some, don't get me wrong, there is an AC-130 mission, there are missions where you can kind of be a sniper if you want, nothing like all gillied up though, or like the Spain mission from MW2, nothing like that, but if you want to be a sniper, you can find sniper rifles on the map and then utilize that if you want. Some of them start you with a sniper, and they're pretty damn effective. But the problem is, in my opinion, when it comes to Modern Warfare 2019 and Modern Warfare 2 2022, both of those campaigns have you doing fundamentally different things and different gameplay styles from mission to mission. No two missions feel the same to you, because the maps are different, what you're doing in those maps are different, and each map and mission is fun and rewarding in its own gameplay idea. So while I didn't like Modern Warfare 2's story all that much, the gameplay propped it all up for me because it was so varied and interesting, with each mission feeling like a set piece all of itself that brought a unique gameplay offering to the table. Modern Warfare 3 is not the same. About half the missions, I want to say, are these open-ended Warzone-esque missions, where they drop you in essentially an open location, give you like 3 objectives to go pursue, go at them in whatever order, then you'll have some kind of like follow-up objective, job done, Bob's your uncle. There's like half the missions in this campaign of like 13, 14 missions. Half of them are like that. There's this one interesting spy mission where you have to use stealth, but even then, it kind of just boils down to walk in a straight line but avoid enemies. Like, walk as far from an enemy as you can and just walk in a straight line. So there's interesting ideas, but they're just underdeveloped and not hashed out enough to be really interesting, like they could have been if this was Modern Warfare 2019 or 2022. So in conclusion, for the gameplay section, it's lackluster. They bring interesting ideas to the table, but because of everything surrounding those ideas, they're never really given the spotlight to really shine. I like it when Call of Duty goes non-linear. I like it when Call of Duty takes risks and tries things out of its wheelhouse. I like that idea. It's just underdeveloped, not fleshed out, and not properly utilized in Modern Warfare 3 on the whole. Now we come to the story. Buckle up, because this is some dookie. You know what? That's an insult to dookie. At least dookie is funny to laugh at. This campaign's storyline is contrived, boring, unfunny, and worst of all, uninteresting. What does it try and do? Well, they bring Makarov to the table. In an interesting mission, where you actually free Prisoner 627, in the first mission who actually turns out to be Makarov instead of Price. Okay, nice little nod to the original Modern Warfare 2, but what happens here? Well, the main problem is Makarov is boring. In the original campaigns, Why was Makarov such a well-beloved villain? No Russian. Shepard told us in the briefing, in the original Modern Warfare games, that Makarov was such a villain, he was such a fiend that needed to be taken down, that we as the playable character would have to sell our souls to the devil in order just to get close to him so we can gain some intel in the hopes that one day we can take him down. So we willingly go through No Russian. We help Makarov at the Moscow airport. But what happens? At the very end, Makarov outsmarts us. He sniffed us out. He shoots us, leaves us for dead, and puts the blame on everything that was just shown and played for us, that we actively participated in as the player was shown, played through. It was all blamed on the US, which kickstarted the events of the war between the United States and Russia in Modern Warfare 2. It was a big scale, big stakes, and Makarov immediately became a threat, who was able to orchestrate an event like this, who, as an ultra-nationalist, draws Russia into a war of anger and revenge against the United States. A war that would eventually spill over to most of the world in Modern Warfare 3 2011. Just in that one singular moment, he is elevated as a worldwide threat. He has gained legitimacy, and we, the player, understand this dude is a menace that needs to be dealt with. What does he do in Modern Warfare 3 2023? Hijacks a plane, and is gonna try and draw Russia into a war with fictional Urzikstan. Do you see how the scale is so significantly held back in the new game? We don't even get to play as an active participant in Makarov's scheme. We play as the victim, not the perpetrator. Which could be cool, but the scale is so low and down to earth, it's not like a World War triggering event. It's not like two superpowers about to go duke it out in a grudge match. No, it just centers around a fictional country we're supposed to care about because Farah comes from there. The stakes are so less in this game than they were in the original. And then you have Makarov bomb like one freaking base with chemical missiles, which is cool, but just not really ever addressed. Think about it. What reaction do we ever really see? In the original Modern Warfare 2, we saw America burn. We saw paratroopers in the sky. We saw tanks down the street, blowing up buildings. We saw war in front of us, burning skies, burning horizons. We saw a freaking nuke go off over the skies of DC as Rangers lead the way to try and regroup and take back the city. It is far more visceral, in your face, and is willing to show you these events, using real-world locations so they have weight behind them. You recognize these locations. You recognize these players on the grand stage of them all. It adds legitimacy somewhat, but it adds a cool factor. Call of Duty didn't care who you were. Call of Duty did not need to make up some kind of fictional location to try and tell this story. You saw America burn in Modern Warfare 2009. Modern Warfare 2. And everything that happened was because of Makarov. And then you learn that Shepard was complicit, just trying to gain some power in the chaos of it all. And at the end of the game, you go after Shepard, who goes down with a fight, who never backs down, never gives up, never rolls over.
5 years ago, I lost 30,000 men in the blink of an eye. And the world just fucking watched. Tomorrow, there will be no shortage of volunteers, no shortage of patriots. I know you understand.
And you throw a knife in his eye to finish the bastard off. What happens in Modern Warfare 3? Well, Shepard kind of gets wrapped up. He was captured by Makarov off-screen, because why would we want to see that or even play through that mission? Oh no, something interesting happened. Don't show the player. Then we team up with him and Graves, who somehow survived an explosion from Modern Warfare 2's boss fight. Don't ask me how. I mean, he's fun enough, so I don't mind him being back, but... Then they blame each other in Congress for some fucking reason, which is the most anticlimactic thing I've ever seen in Call of Duty. Of the ones I played specifically. And then you get the post-credits scene, which is just Price being there to shoot Shepard at the very end. Which is like, okay, that would be cool if Shepard had way more development and was remotely interesting. He was just kind of insert military douchebag number one here. Shepard in the original was cool. He gave us speeches before the missions that resonated, that spoke to the themes and motifs of the game that was being covered, while also revealing some of his insights as to global politics and his view of the world. They were memorable, they were quotable, and the voice acting was superb. This dude is forgettable. This new guy, completely rudimentary, one-dimensional, and forgettable. Let's think about it. What does Makarov really accomplish throughout the confines of Modern Warfare 3? We have the flashback mission where he blows up the stadium. Whoop-de-doo. He tries to blame Uzbekistan for the plane hijacking, which is like, okay. And then he drops 2 chemical missiles on a Russian military base. That's it. In the original trilogy, the dude jumpstarts World War III in no Russian, gives us the location of Shepard so that we can go after him, kidnaps the Russian president and the Russian president's daughter, manages to get Soap McTavish killed in an extremely emotional scene, we'll get to that, kills Yuri and all of Delta Force in Modern Warfare 3, or at least his soldiers do. He is a threat. He does a lot of grand, epic things throughout both Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 3, because he's given 2 games to shine, and we grow to hate him. We're given reasons to hate him. The game shows us what he does, and how he outsmarts us time and time again. And even when it comes to no Russian, we actively play through that section. We are a willing participant, we play through that section. It adds gravity to it, it adds meaning to it, because it shows it, it doesn't tell it. The new trilogy, Makarov is just kind of James Bond villain number 27. He's just kind of there. And the things that he accomplishes, like, sure, in a vacuum you can consider these things to be impactful, but they never really do anything with this. The stadium being exploded, never really mentioned again. We don't know what the fallout of that is. It's never shown. The airplane, we have like 1 mission wrapping that one up. 1 or 2 at least. The Russian base, not mentioned again really. Outside of Yuri, who was just kind of there as a reference. The story fails to tell an interesting throughput narrative because the events don't naturally flow from one another. They're segmented, they only really matter in the moment, but the events that happen themselves don't really shape what happens next. They're just kind of there to serve as reason or justification for us to supposed to hate Makarov, instead of having the machinations of Makarov drive the narrative forward. And then at the end, when Soap dies, Jesus Christ, how to miss the mark 101. So, why does Soap's death work in the original? Well, in the original, Modern Warfare 3 2011, Soap dies, and that works for us because he was our protagonist for all of Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. Not all of it, but for most of it. We played as him at the very end of Modern Warfare 2, whereas before that point, he was kind of like a mentor to us in Modern Warfare 2. But then we regained control of him at the very end, reclaiming a mantle as MC from COD 4. We fight alongside him again in Modern Warfare 3, and then he dies. So our guy, the guy we played as in pivotal moments throughout this series, dies before us. It affects us, because they also allow the death to sink in. Price freaks out. He shouts out no repeatedly. You can feel the emotion in the air through both the song and the gravity of the situation going on before us. We are surrounded on all sides, but they still take a moment to allow the death to be impactful for Price. And the death of Soap also gives Price useful and important information that will change the entire context of the series up to that point. Makarov knows Yuri. They just never did anything with that in Modern Warfare 3 2023. Makarov knowing Yuri recontextualizes every main event of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4, Modern Warfare 2 2009, and even Modern Warfare 3 2011. Recontextualizes all of those events because now we know Makarov and Yuri were there from the start. They were there from the beginning, each step of the way, having a hand to play in every event or witnessing it. It recontextualizes everything, so the death of Soap is a massive transition period for the entire story, not even for the events, but also your perception of those events. And it gives us more of a personal reason to hate Makarov, because Price never gets over it. What happens in Modern Warfare 3 2023? Dude dies in like the final moments of the last mission, and we immediately have to move on to the bomb to defuse it instead of taking a moment to recognize the death of Soap, who is less impactful because he wasn't the protagonist. For most of the campaign, we've played a few missions as him, but not to the degree of the original trilogy. So Soap as a character just doesn't have the same weight as he did before. And even if he did, they don't give you enough time for that to really sink in because one, the music's just forgettable on the whole, but also, Soap dies and then immediately Price moves over to the bomb situation. They don't give us time to naturally mourn the death of Soap in the immediate moment. I didn't even realize Soap was dead for like 20 seconds because I thought it would be a fake out because there was no way they were going to do it like this. If you wanted an analog for the new trilogy for someone to kill, someone like Alex or Gaz would have been perfect contenders because we played as them for significant chunks of this new trilogy. We saw them develop as characters. Their death would have meant something. But Soap is just a pale imitation of his former self. So the death has no weight. They have one interesting scene where they scatter his ashes across the ocean or lake or whatever, which is kind of cool. But again, the character and the characterization doesn't have enough development for that moment to really take effect and to be effective. And then at the very end, they just kind of like speed through Shepard's death. Price is in the room because, you know, Laswell cheat code. Price pulls a James Spader from Blacklist and just shoots Shepard. There's your campaign. But it's so boring and one-dimensional. It lacks the stakes of the original. It lacks that cool factor. And each step of the way, they want to feel true and gritty. Like they want to be as edgy and badass as the original trilogy. They even give you the warning, the content warning at the very beginning, saying mature themes and images will be shown to you in the future throughout this campaign. But they lack the bite and the balls to really go deep and do what the original trilogy did. They use fictional locations and separate groups to avoid using real-world locations and real-world countries. Why was the invasion of the United States so cool in the original Modern Warfare games? Because we saw these famous sites that we all knew about. Burning, ruined. Makarov was such an evil genius because he pulled the country of Russia into war with the country of the United States. Not just Makarov's like fringe paramilitary group. No, it's the country of Russia invading the country of the United States. There is no stand-in here, so you don't have this odd feeling of disconnect because it's grounded in real-world locations and real-world countries. And the stakes are higher, which makes Makarov and his machinations feel all the more impactful and meaningful, whereas in this game, he just kind of reeks of a James Bond villain. I swear to God, you give him a mustache, he would have twirled it. It's a pale imitation of its former self that wants to be edgy and badass and to show you the brutality of war, but is too afraid and cowardly to actually go through and show you a war. Makarov's actions in the beginning of Modern Warfare 2 in No Russian resonated all to the very end of Modern Warfare 3 2011. It took 2 full games to wrap up what he did. In this game, he like slowly unveiled his machinations over the course of like the first half and we wrapped it up in the second half. And maybe he'll show up in another game. But the big story beats that could have been so impactful have already come to pass. And they lack the substance and bite of the original because the game's too scared to be as ballsy as the original games. At this point, just tell a completely different story. Don't be beholden to the story beats and trying to replicate them, even with your own twist, with this new franchise. I loved Modern Warfare 2019 because it was separate. It wasn't trying to be COD 4, for the most part. It was willing to be its own separate entity, and I think it thrived because of that. The cracks started to show when they tried to follow story beats from the original with Modern Warfare 2 2022, and the glass house shattered with this game. And we still have multiplayer and zombies, but when it comes to the single player, it is a pale imitation of its former self. That lacks the foundation, that lacks the heart and soul of the original, is not memorable whatsoever, has a couple interesting ideas mired down and bogged down in a sea and a cacophony of underdeveloped systems, rehashed locations, and mechanics, and ideas, and an unimaginative storyline, barely holding everything to ruins, not even together. And for $70 or $100, I can't recommend that. And sure, we still have the multiplayer, but even then, the maps are just rehashed old maps. but I'll admit I enjoy the demo. We'll cover the multiplayer when the multiplayer comes out. But for now, with the campaign, boring, unimaginative, poorly designed, poorly implemented, with a couple interesting ideas, and I really want to see them explore non-linear sections and more open sections again in the future. They did it with Call of Duty Black Ops 2. I want to see them continue this idea in the future. But it is so apparent that this game was just cut content that was planned to be DLC for Modern Warfare 2, repackaged for a $70 experience because they know people would buy it. I got it because I like Call of Duty, and I wanted to review it. But yeah, that's my review. It's a shame. It really is. So I'll call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed me yelling into my microphone, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and help support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. And hit the bell icon to be notified when I upload and stream in the future. Stay safe, have a great day. Go play some video games if you can, and as always, I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.